Yeah, going back to one of your other questions, it's sort of troubling to me when I interact with people, whether it's golf or bars or restaurants. I sometimes we get into annual assessments, especially with some of the younger people I interact with, and I ask them, well, tell me how your annual assessment went. And I got to tell you, I hear a lot of very poor responses from employees. Well, I never, I don't sit down with my boss. Did you get an annual appraisal this year? No. Well, did you talk to anybody throughout the year? Not really. Maybe in quick, that's the very poor answer. A common answer is, hey, I got my appraisal sent to me. I got told, hey, if you had any questions or comments, get back to me. But I just find that, frankly, absurd and appalling. And it tells me that maybe people don't appreciate the value of sitting down and doing a year-end review at the individual level and how you can help that individual with their individual positives or their weaknesses, maybe how you can help them going forward. So I translate that to if we're doing those individual performance appraisals poorly, I question how much we do at the team or organizational level. I would be surprised that you do individual performance appraisals poorly, but you sit back and do your company and your team year-end reviews well. I would find that hard to believe. It's either a belief that the business owner and the team believes that it's very important to sit down and talk to your individuals and do it at the team level or not. So based on some of the data that I get from people when I just chat with them, from frankly big companies, I'm not putting that on any particular size. I just think managers and business owners sometimes struggle with sitting down and providing honest, candid feedback to their employees. And I think it begs the question then, okay, can they be honest and accurate when they're assessing their own performance or their company or team's performance?
Right. And as important as a year in review is equally important to transition into annual planning for the new year or 2022. And we're with Darin Myers, who is the local CEO of TAB CSRA, the alternative board, and lots to get to about annual planning. And some folks don't know that in addition to you coaching other business owners and working with folks with their issues and their opportunities, you also help run a small business with your daughter in the medical field. Mm-hmm. And what I find fascinating as we dive into what occurred in 2021 and what we expect in 2022, the things that are critical for you with employees and culture and making improvements are really triggered by what's happening in our economy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think the annual planning concept is one, the beauty of a goal is to have one. Mm-hmm. Let's just start with that basic premise. I mean, there does need to be a little bit of strategic thought and strategic planning versus just day-to-day firefighting. Mm-hmm. And getting into the trenches. And I hear all too often business owners say, yeah, we'll go off to Hilton Head or we'll go somewhere and we put our team together and we put together a strategic plan. And they will then self-admittedly tell me, and it sort of dies on the vine, we have great ambitions in January, but it just, for whatever reason, doesn't happen. And so it doesn't have the momentum, the horsepower as a part of the culture to get it going. So back to your question, I think all too often business owners, especially smaller or mid-sized business owners, maybe try to take on too much too quickly. I think it's okay to, you eat an elephant one bite at a time to some degree. And I'm not suggesting business owners can't have 2 or 3 goals, but I think all too often business owners maybe try to take on too much overcommit. Maybe it looks good on paper. Everybody agrees to it, but they spread themselves too thin, their resources, whether it's money or time. And in a day come March, they look at their strategic plans and recognize they're already off track. And they get demoralized and not motivated, and it just dies before it even honestly starts. So I think it's important up front to really identify some of those critical success factors. So this is a very long way of answering your question. So, I think it's okay for a small business owner to identify one or two critical success factors that are just imperative for their business. Establish one or two goals to make sure that you drive and get that factor taken care of. So in my case, my home health care, it's about labor. I've had here as of late, I've had clients that have called me looking for my services, and I haven't been able to provide it. Why? Because I don't have enough caregivers. And so right now, as I head into 2022, I have just one really success factor that I'm focusing on in my strategic plan, and that is how to go hire more caregivers, quality caregivers. I mean, look, I can go hire a body. Right. That's not what we're doing. And so it's important that, I focus on what I think is really imperative right now. I could go put together 3 or 4 other success factors and have 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 goals and all this, and I personally think it will detract me from what I really should be focusing on. And so, so in my case, the labor pool of the labor shortage and the issues of 2021 is what's impacting what I'm going to do in 2022 with my particular strategy.
And as you climb the layer of the pyramid from the critical success factor to the goal that you have, which is to hire more really good caregivers, what is your strategy to make it happen in 2022?
Well, one, assess what I've done in 21, which would have been a little bit of part of the year-end review, but what worked well for me, what didn't, and try to check and adjust. So a lot of, obviously, referrals have helped tremendously, so we're going to go back and look at how I can strengthen that. At the end of the day, that year-end review, some of your strategies may be, how do I play my strengths? Do I take a strength and try to even leverage it further? Or a weakness, why was I weak last year, and what can I do to either mitigate that or turn that weakness into a strength? And look, for opportunities, even threats, and this isn't the case, but it's a hypothetical, but what if I'd lost a lot of my caregivers to a particular, competitor or something? Maybe they're doing something different. So I need to step back, and those would be the strategies that I would employ, and I would honestly use that SWOT or that year in review and what it told me to go after what the next strategies are.
How about one's target market?
Well, in my case, I think my target market has to wait until my caregivers. My market is, I'm turning away clients right now, and that's not a good feeling. So I'm having to work on something different than my target market right now, which is, in my case, employees, and getting my ability to continue to absorb what's been a tremendous growth curve for me.
And, in addition to that, for those watching with the annual planning, how much of a gold mine is your own existing customers that you have in your system?
Well, I don't know. It should be in everybody's system. I mean, there's data out there that shows retaining customers is cheaper than going and finding new ones, and really largely for employees as well. So customer satisfaction, soliciting their feedback, trying to find out, where you sit with your current customers. What do they need? I think those are all questions that will be valuable every year, not just this upcoming year.
As part of our 2022 annual plan for Augusta Business Daily, we have about 600 paid or complimentary members that have reached out to us, and they get our product every day, and we're going to call every one of them.
Right.
We're going to call every one of them. We're hiring someone to do that because we crave the feedback.
Right.
And you know, I'm a business person. I'm hoping that some people will like to step up and enjoy other products and services that we have.
Right.
The upsell, right?
Right. Well, look, the annual plan, you talked about the target market. I've talked to you about employee base.
Mm-hmm.
I think new markets, you know, is something. I think you got to go back and look at technology and how you're operating your plant and or operating your business. But is there new tools? Is there new software? I think that's got to be a part of your annual plan. Tools can certainly be a force multiplier and leverage your productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, we haven't even brought up the word just how we performed cash-wise, but in our year in review, we certainly would have done that. But you got to look at, you know, what's my goal for sales or what's my goal for customer retention?
Mm-hmm.
Where's my cash flow been? What's my productivity? Where's my debt to equity ratios, so on and so forth. I think you got to all do that as well. And the last thing, not the last thing, but another thing I would challenge the business owners would be, where's your personal role? You know, the last podcast, we talked about culture. You know, I think that's also very important. Where's your current leadership? Where are you at specifically? Does your role need to change? If you've brought on new employees, more employees, better employees, how's that impacted your culture? And do you have the right role? Are you operating in the right role? Do you need to change your patterns and behaviors and habits? And I think that all needs to be a part of the year-end review and the annual plan.
Do we still look at what our competitors are doing as well?
Well, absolutely. Well, I would think so.
Yeah.
I think you need to understand where you sit in the market and where do you sit in relation. I mean, so for example, if you know you got a competitor that's strong in an area and you're weak in that given area, why would you go play in that kind of market? You would need to change something, either get yourself in a strength. So those all things, I think that's why it's called strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
And if you find yourself in the tactical mold in the trenches fighting the fires, you maybe are doing things that maybe wouldn't make sense if you could step back and look at it strategically and say, maybe I need to step back and think. So I just can't emphasize enough about strategic plan. I think sometimes a business or a team that's underperforming, that's the word I was looking for, underperforming. If you're underperforming, I think they feel a rush. I got to go do something right now. And certainly there probably is a sense of urgency, but not so much so that you jump without thinking. And I think it would pay off in dividends if folks step back and did a little bit of year in review, SWOT analysis, a little bit of annual planning strategically, that will, and do that in a quick order, but not so fast that you're making mistakes. Strategic planning is so important.
And before we scoot, does TAB have some resources for people who've never done a year in review or an annual plan before?
Well, the answer is yes. You know that. I appreciate you setting that up. But yeah, we do have tools where we go through pretty extensively the year in review as well as the annual plan, strategic planning, SWOT analysis, what I'll call differentiators. You know, in other words, what's your red rose offering that your competitors aren't doing? In other words, what's setting you apart from your competitors? Action planning, accountability. I think that's very important. That I mentioned it's important, and I always get you want to give someone a pat on the back of saying, hey, I went somewhere last year and I put together a strategic plan, and that's a great step. But then at the end of the day, they don't put that into their daily DNA with their team. They don't even put weekly, monthly, or quarterly. And honestly, it was just, I'll say, a mood exercise. because they really had no intentions of making that be a part of their fabric.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the other thing that we know on the tab board is we hold each other accountable. So in our case, when we put our plans together, you're going to be bringing your plans month to month, and people are going to be talking about due dates and timelines that you put on yourself, and have you met those? Why or why not?
Right. Great point. And tabcsra.com is the website to look for some resources, and then a button to get in touch with Darin and give him a call and talk through a lot of these neat things. 2022 is going to be a great year. It is. But there's some hurdles. We just got to work through them.
No. Well, that's life, isn't it? So I would just, again, for anyone out there that has not really taken the planning or the year-end review concept or process as a part of their normal business practices, I would just implore you, based on my experiences, it's well worthwhile. And I can't think of a better year, as we've mentioned, why you should do it.
Right.
And I think in doing that, it will not guarantee success in 22, but it will certainly maximize your possibilities. There's no guarantees in business nor life. And I think these plans, though, really maximize your efforts. And so I would really reinforce the need to do these things.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As always.
All
Appreciate
right.
your time.
Appreciate it.